Is that better? Okay, great. Here's some examples of the transformational geometry. You can look those up later. Next slide. American Principles Project was the report you were trying to remember earlier, Tim. The group that did the research and examined the standards, it's called American Principles Project, and they made a list here of all the things that were taken out of the Common Core. Now, I suspect the reasoning for that was because they wanted to maintain this fewer, deeper concept. Have you heard that argument yet? One of the things they like about the standards is that they're fewer and deeper and not a mile long. Okay, I like that, and the teachers that I've talked to like that because it simplifies their life. Okay, but from a parent's perspective, you don't take out some basic math competencies here in order to save the fewer, deeper concept. No prime factorization, least common denominators, greatest common factors. You can read all that on your own. And then they also make the argument that this is going to leave our kids 1 to 2 years behind our international peers because, and you can read that. Next slide. Try to hurry this along. We talked about that, about the college readiness being 2-year selective. I recommend that everybody on this council get online and Google Secretary of Education Arne Duncan's speech to UNESCO in 2010. George W. Bush signed us up as members with UNESCO back in 2003, and as a result of that agreement, we send our education secretary to the UN every year to make a speech about how we're improving education on our side of the pond. Understand that Common Core is a global effort. This is not restricted here. Australia was the pilot. It's failing there. UK and Canada are going through the same discussions that we're having. In fact, Canada had petitions going around about the math in their provinces, and they're trying to get rid of the math as well. It's just a different name. They don't call it Common Core. But the point of this is to have global standards. So if you think local control is important, keep that in mind. And read Secretary Arne Duncan's speech because he outlines all of the goals of this reform in that speech. Next slide. You can skip that video, Anna Marie. That's Jason. So why is my child crying about it? Look, my issue here is with the elementary kids. That's where it's wreaking havoc the most. There was a lot of discussion this morning for 7th grade and above, and that's not really so bad. I really do think that the Department of Ed here did a pretty good job dealing with the algebra and scaffolding it in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade so that really they're getting that equivalent of Algebra 1 in 8th grade, because as parents we agree, all of our 8th graders need the opportunity to take Algebra 1 in the 8th grade. That is critical. We're not going to compete with anybody if we're not doing that. But we shouldn't be sorting them before 7th grade to find out who's going to take it and who's not. Everybody should get the opportunity to take that class at that level. Where the problems with the math are taking place are especially in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. There's some issues with K through 2, but that's mostly CGI stuff. It's not so bad. It's grades 3, 4, and 5 that are making the parents nuts. And it's because it doesn't make any sense. It's constructivist. And they're not getting the basics that they need in order to do what they need to do by the time they get to 8th grade. If you would like to see more information about that, there was some mention of that letter today. There were 500 early childhood development specialists that signed an open letter. It's online. I can get you a copy of it if you want, stating that these standards are absolutely, positively, cognitively inappropriate for children 3rd grade and under, and they've got to go.
Hang on one second.
Yes.
Will you print that out at some point? And I want to see that.
I'll send you a link to it if you
Yeah,
want.
today I want to get to everybody.
There's also Dr. Thompson, who's a very outspoken clinical child psychologist in the state of Utah, who refers to the Common Core as cognitive child abuse, and he advocates for their reversal at the elementary level. I also have video testimony from Dr. Megan Koshnick that we can listen to later. It's quite short. And then there's also this white paper that was written in the Educational Psychologist back in 2006 that makes the case that these constructivist practices are, in fact, a failure, and why they don't work cognitively at the elementary level. So there's some good science there for you to read at your leisure. That picture that you see there was taken by a mother who happens to do some photography on the side while her daughter was trying to do her math homework. I believe she said she's in 2nd grade, and this is common. And I know people want to say that, you know, parents just don't want to do any work and we don't care, we don't want our kids to succeed and all these silly things. We don't know the difference between standards and content. What I'm here to tell you is that that is exactly what my son looked like. And I hear from parents every day all over the country with elementary school children who look like that, and no parent and no child should spend 2 to 3 hours a night on one sheet of math homework. This is nuts. It's been proven that it doesn't work. And it's got to go, or the public schools are going to lose all of their affluent kids. Because the parents who can and will take their kids out. And they will give up their luxuries to privately educate them, or they were homeschooling them. That's what I did. I pulled them out and homeschooled them. I couldn't take it. It's so disruptive. It's so chaotic. It's so inappropriate. You're going to see an increase in ADD and ADHD diagnoses and behavioral problems and suspensions because these kids are being asked to do things they cannot do. Next slide. That's the video. 2 more, Anna Marie. All right. So here's the other question that I get. Well, what do you want to do? What would you replace it with? Do you have a plan? Yes, we have a plan. The first thing I think we need to do is we need to get out of our arrangement with the NGA and the CCSSO. They're the 2 DC-based trade groups that hold the copyright to the standards. We are not allowed to change those standards. That is written in the Federal Register. Per our Race to the Top agreement, we cannot revise the standards. Federal Register. I'll send you the info. I'll send you the link. What the Federal Register says we can do is we can add up to 15%. And so what a lot of states have done with that is they've added things like cursive. Florida did that. They added cursive back into their ELA, which is a good thing, but we cannot change them. We would have to sever the ties and create our own standards. What I think should have happened in the first place is they should have offered Common Core as a model to the states. They should have said, here's what we suggest you do, tweak it at will. But that wasn't the goal, because the goal is to get everyone in lockstep. So our suggestions include, eliminate the failed constructivist approaches and restore standard algorithm and cognitively appropriate rote math for 7th grade and below. Number 2, restore early proficiency for addition and subtraction. Here's what happened. The fluent proficiencies got bumped up a level. So back in the days of the old Arkansas frameworks, and you can compare them, I've got copies of them if you want to see them, they had to be fluent. Mental math with addition and subtraction by grade 3. Well, now that's been moved up to grade 4. The fluency for multiplication has been moved from grade 3 to grade 4. The division's been moved up from grade 5 to grade 6. Dr. Worman confirmed that earlier, and he said grade 6 is too late for that division, and he's right. We ran into a problem with my son in 4th grade right before I pulled him out. They were starting fractions, and none of the kids could do the fraction work because none of them knew how to multiply. There was no rote memorization of the facts. And then the proponents come back to those parents and they say, oh, there's multiplication, there's rote memorization in the standards. Here it is. The standard says they only have to memorize the factor. Two numbers they have to memorize the products, but that's it. Not all of them, 1 to 12. We fixed that in the legislature this year. We mandated it now that all the kids have to learn the multiplication tables by the end of 3rd grade because Common Core wouldn't give that to them because it's so rigorous, college ready. Restore prime factorization, least common denominators, and all those things from the APP report. Keep the CGI approaches as an option for grades K through 3. Keep that as an option, but don't use it after grade 3 because what the CGI experts I've spoken to have said is that here's the problem with CGI and Common Core, it's the implementation of it. 1, it doesn't really work after 3rd grade. 2, it doesn't work if they had standard algorithm once and then get CGI. You got to start with it in kindergarten and finish with it in 3rd grade. And 3, it doesn't work on paper with the manipulatives. Like when you see the Common Core aligned textbooks and on the test, they try to mock what the kids would be doing with the manipulatives in their hand by drawing pictures on paper, and that's a disconnect. It doesn't work. So as long as the CGI is done right, it'll work for grades K through 3, and we would like to see that remain. And then restore replace, I can't see past Tommy's head. Replace internationally failed transformational geometry and go back to Euclidean. The only way we're going to be able to meet these goals, which parents and teachers are asking for, is to cut your ties with the Common Core state standards and the organization that owns them. Create your own set of standards, keep what you like, ditch what you don't like. And you're going to have to get rid of those mathematical practice standards. Because that's the overlay that's causing all of this disruption. Okay. I think that's it, Anne Marie. Further reading there. You have a handout in your binder that I've given you. It's 38 pages long. But it gives you the history of constructivism in America. And it explains in depth along with all the supporting research, the point that I made to you about how these mathematical approaches, known as constructivism, have failed for almost 100 years. We don't need to do the experiment for a 5th time. We already know it's not going to work, and our kids don't have time to experiment. My children are never going to get 4th grade back, they're never going to get 5th grade back. I don't have time to wait for bureaucrats to make up their mind. We need to go with what we know works. And so there's some reading on that. There's a link to the white paper from the Pioneer Institute, which also did a study, and then there's the American Principles Project white paper also that has Mr. Worman's input on it. I thank you so much for your time. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that we're getting this discourse, because parents have been left out of this conversation. And traditionally, when it comes to education standards, there's a great deal of public discourse, and we did not get that back in 2010. Those decisions were made behind closed doors, and this is a breath of fresh air. And I thank you so much.